Mizell. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion approved. For the record, Mr. Moran and Mr. Cannon are not present. Next item of business will be the approval of the June 8th, 2017 minutes. I'll say that. Motion by Mr. Caldwell, second by Mr. Solsky. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion approved. Next item of business will be the approval of the July agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the July agenda.
Motion by Ms. Mizell,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Caldwell. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion approved. Items for postponement withdrawal.
We have item A, the Morgan property tract is postponed.
Okay.
And
Pete.
this is their final postponement. So
PDP 2017-14, the Morgan Tract Property Tract 2 is postponed. If you're here for that application, we will not be hearing it tonight.
And also under other business, the Coal Ridge Preserve Area Amendment is withdrawn.
Coal Ridge Preserved Area Amendment is withdrawn. If you're here for that, it is withdrawn. So we won't be hearing that one either.
Can I interrupt here a second?
Yes, sir.
Joe, what did you mean by the Morgan property?
Well, they're allowed 3 postponements.
Mhm.
We had one before it was heard the first time. There's been 2 since, so that's their last postponement they're allowed. So if they don't want to be heard again, they'll have to withdraw and then
Okay. Thank you.
The consent agenda is the next item of business. We do have a couple of applications that we can put on the consent agenda. One is the Perkins property. It is application PSP 2017-22. The Perkins property is preliminary subdivision plat to subdivide 10-acre tract from a 50.8-acre parent tract located at 1746 Schweitzer Road. If you are here in opposition of the Perkins property application, no one here to oppose that application, then we can have a motion to accept that on the consent
Mr. Chairman,
agenda.
I move we approve PSP 2017-22 by consent. I'll second.
A motion by Mr. Smith, a second by Mr. Solsky. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion approved.
By the way, Mr. Chairman, just for the record, that's no connection to me. I don't know who those folks are.
If anyone's here representing that application,
Yes.
please come up and sign. Can you come up and sign your papers, please?
Just sign.
A second application we have for a consent agenda is the Schreffler property. I hope I said that right.
You did.
It's a PSP 2017-23. It's a preliminary subdivision plat to subdivide a 5.01 acre tract from a 22.03 acre parent tract located at 4410 Ironworks Road. Is anyone here to oppose that application? If no one's here to oppose that application, we need a motion to approve that on consent, please.
I'll make a motion to approve that as consent.
Motion by Mr. Solsky, second by Mr. Wiseman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed,
Which one is that?
motion approved.
Shuffler.
All right, we'll go into our first application. Charlie, can you go ahead and swear everyone in, please?
Yes. Everyone who signed in to speak, if you could stand, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the statement you're to make tonight to be the truth to the best of your information and belief? Thank you.
Our first application we'll be hearing is the Pinnacle at Mallard Point.
Well, actually,
Emerson.
under old business, the
Oh, Emerson. I skipped right over him.
Dinner's calling.
He's waiting. Yeah, dinner. It was calling before I left the house. I'll say that. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
I was looking at the same thing.
I was all the way down. Yeah, I'm moving right on.
This application is a request for preliminary subdivision plat and preliminary development plan approval for the Emerson Farms Commercial Center. This is part of a project that received zoning approval in 2010. It was a mixed-use development. A portion of it was zoned R3 PUD and included single-family lots, townhomes, and an apartment complex or apartment area. And then it included B4 commercial area, one at the center of the project, and then one at the corner of Lemons Mill and the bypass. The application before you tonight is that center commercial area, and as part of this, a previous section, this section here, has already, the townhome and basically these 4 commercial lots have already been approved, have already had a preliminary development plan approved. But now they're submitting the rest of the project, and they've included those lots as part of their submittal. So you'll be reapproving those lots because there are slight changes to those 4 lots. The townhomes aren't part of this new application, so those do still have a preliminary development plan approval on them. But the request is both for a subdivision plat and a development plan approval. The reason being that there's this commercial area is fairly large, and they want to split it up into multiple lots for financing and to perhaps develop it incrementally, one lot at a time, or to sell off lots if that's what they want to do. So you are seeing the preliminary subdivision plat as well as the preliminary development plan. As I said, the zone change was approved in 2010, and it included a pretty detailed concept plan. And you can see the buildings are actually on the plan, and it's color-coded. Red is commercial. The yellow and the orange are the different densities of residential, and the green's open space or detention areas. So the application you have in front of you does follow pretty closely, or almost mirrors the concept plan approval. So there aren't any significant changes. The one major change is the center roadway. Originally, as part of the zone change submittal, they showed it as a wide 100-foot, I believe, right-of-way with a 4-lane configuration. So and on-street parking. So they had on-street parking on the road. They intended it to be a public road. So at that time, they negotiated with the city engineer, and they came up with a proposal to separate the drive-through traffic. So the public traffic that's going to be using this main roadway separated from the parking. So they had 2 through lanes, and then they had 2 separated drive aisles, and then the on-street parking. The major change to this plan configuration is that they've redone that right-of-way, and they now intend for this to stay private. And this project really mirrors the Townley Center in Lexington. So they have a similar, almost exact configuration in Lexington of their commercial area. So the intent is now for this to be private, and all the other streets around it to be public. So this will all be public right of way. Since this was approved, they did have to trade some land with the school board, and the school was built at Lemons Mill Elementary over here. So one benefit of this configuration is school bus traffic can avoid this center kind of commercial area, and they can bypass it and get to the school on the secondary roads. So I think the plan is to build at least this section of road in the very beginning, so it's ready for the fall school year. So that's the major change at this center. Commercial road is going to be privately maintained, and we'll have on-street parking that'll back out into the through lane. So essentially, since it mirrors the concept plan, we don't have any major issues with it. We reviewed the concept plan, and they've followed all the recommendations. I wanted to show this configuration of Townley Center so you just see how the center area will look. This lot isn't built, still not built. This is the entrance to Townley Center, so they have the roads in the center, or the buildings in the center area built to the sidewalk, so there's no parking in front of the building. And they have multiple outlots surrounding it that are more conventionally designed, so they have parking and drive-throughs. But they're maintaining kind of a Main Street commercial center down the main road. So to get back to the development plan that we reviewed, since this area, this zone district was designed and originally created to encourage or promote walkable commercial development, there is a requirement that instead of a setback line, there's a build-to line, and that build-to line on internal streets is a 35-foot build-to line. The reason that was put in the zoning ordinance, or that this district, is that 35-foot line doesn't allow you to put off-street parking in front of the building. It forces you to kind of design the front more pedestrian orientation or pedestrian friendly way. So any off-street parking would require an 18-foot parking aisle and then a drive aisle to access the parking of 24 feet for two-way traffic. So it wouldn't allow that to be included in a 35-foot to building line. Because of the multiple outlots, the applicant is asking for a waiver of that 35-foot build-to line on these commercial outlots on the secondary street. They are going to meet that on the main kind of the center Main Street commercial area. In addition, this zoning district requires on all internal lots for the parking to be on the side or the rear of the building, and that's again it goes along with the build-to line, is to promote kind of more walkable streets, so there's no cars, kind of those car pedestrian conflicts. They are going to need that variance as well on the secondary street. We talked to them at TRC and at workshop and at a meeting in between the two, and because there's a demand for this conventional commercial, because there's multiple outlots, and because the design of these wouldn't, I guess the scale of this commercial area wouldn't necessarily support this commercial development to be all this traditional Main Street design. So we are supportive of their variance request, but we asked them to design the secondary street to be more pedestrian accessible, and they've agreed to widen the sidewalks and include street trees and make these connections to the main parking areas, these enhanced pedestrian connections on the outlots, and also to provide pedestrian connections from the sidewalk to the front of the buildings on these outlots. So they're enhancing the pedestrian accessibility on these side lots, but they do need a variance to both the build-to line and the parking, and the variance to allow them to put parking in front of the buildings. And the building setback that they're showing on this plan is 60 feet. Typically, our commercial is 50 feet. So if you want to specify a building setback instead of a build-to line, I would suggest 50 feet because it allows them some flexibility. A building setback requires them to be behind that line, or a build-to line. They would have to put the facades on that line. They would have no option. So I would suggest if you want to call it out, require a 50-foot setback. Otherwise, I don't think it's necessary to call it out, because under this design, to get parking in the front, they're going to have to be 60 feet back. They're not going to go more than 60 feet because then they lose all the buildable area of the lot. So you may want to call it out. Or as an alternative, you may want to require all the facades line up along the street so that there's a uniform kind of frontage. It may be difficult on this road, on this these lots between the secondary road and the bypass, just because of the building types that are proposed. Some fast food may not fit into that setback scenario, because there is a setback required from the perimeter of this B4 area. So, and I believe that's 50 feet. So there is a perimeter on these lots, a perimeter setback. So if you limited this setback to 50, you may squeeze those lots too much to make them usable. So just throw that out there because that came up at the workshop. The other issue with this is it's in the Royal Springs Aquifer Recharge Area, so it requires approval from the Wellhead Protection Committee, and they did go to the committee this morning, and the committee has made recommendations, and I got that letter of approval with recommendations today, and we did add a standard condition of approval that they follow all recommendations of the Wellhead Protection Committee as part of final development and plan approval. But if you want me to read those out and include those in the record, I'll go ahead and read them out. So the recommendation of Royal Spring Water Supply Protection Committee was that no gas stations be permitted to be constructed in this development in the Royal Spring Aquifer Recharge Area, which I believe includes all this section of the commercial area. Individual final development plans must come back through the Wellhead Protection Committee prior to final development plan approval. And due to the high concentration of commercial lots and in light of the current stormwater design, the committee recommended that an inline water quality treatment device be installed downstream of this commercial area to contain spills prior to the water entering the stormwater basin. So those we can enter into the record as additional conditions. Other than that, we are recommending approval with the 14 conditions in the staff report. The one other issue that we kind of got resolved at the last month's workshop, this was postponed from June, is the kind of staff concern with this Main Street design of this Main Street commercial area, that we felt like it should be continuous building frontage along the whole street, and they show these lot 1C and 2B as having buildings that actually fronted or faced the bypass with parking in front, and that was the whole intent of this kind of walkable commercial area, to have buildings that fronted the main street and sidewalks that promoted walking to and from the buildings and entrances off the street. So we had concerns with the layout of these, and I've added that as condition number 5. Originally, I had as a condition just eliminate these surface parking lots on these two lots and put a building there facing the street. But I've amended it to say buildings on lots 1C and 2B shall be oriented towards Pleasant View Drive, and staff shall review and approve final building footprint and facades at time of final development plan approval. So I'm recommending changing number 5 to say we'll look at the building orientation and layout at time of the final development plan approval. And to kind of illustrate that a little bit, looking at Townley Center, see this is an Applebee's, and they faced it kind of how they want to do it in Georgetown. They faced the building to front the traffic as it comes in, so you can see the main entrance. and they provided a little parking area in front of the building so you could park and enter directly. And this is not a complete blank facade, but has no building entrances and doesn't face Town Center Drive. It doesn't face the main pedestrian street. And there are service areas in the rear, and they've shielded that or screened that with a brick wall. I would recommend that this facade not be blank and have an entrance at least facing the street, and have window openings along the length of the facade. So that's kind of where I was going with the recommendation. This is Townley Center, so this is the blank wall at the back of the building. Right here, that faces kind of when you park in the back, you can take this sidewalk to the front, and there's a blank wall here, which is fine. It blocks all that service area, but they could maybe run the wall here and maybe make this more pedestrian oriented, so it's more kind of like they put a patio here. But I mean, and the only reason I'm making those recommendations is this B4 zone. It was designed to create walkable commercial. I mean, that was the whole intent of the district, and they're kind of doing it here, but they didn't follow through with the whole length of the street. So if we're granting them a variance to do more conventional design in the side streets, it seems like they should commit to more walkable commercial on this entire length of the street. So that would be my recommendation, or my kind of concession, that we look at that when they get a user for that lot, and we can kind of look at the design. This is the side of that Applebee's. I guess it does have a ramp and I think a takeout door there, so they could do something similar. Hopefully, the ramp could be designed to not cut it off so much, but this is kind of the blank wall here. But they obviously did make an attempt in Lexington to do the same thing. So we are recommending approval just to see it in writing. This is my recommended change to condition number 5, and the addition of I did change the wording of number 9 a little bit, just because, not the content, or not the intent, but the Royal Springs Wellhead Committee makes a recommendation. It's up to the Planning Commission to enforce that, put that into law. So you have to adopt their condition in order for us to enforce it. Otherwise, it's just a recommendation. And then the final 5 conditions are pretty standard and relate to this plan and the previous zoning approval. That's all I got. Do you have any questions?
Anyone have any questions for Joe right now?
Which lot was this Applebee's on this main plot?
On our,
1C?
yeah, I believe it was 1C.
1C.
No, it would have been, it would be 2B on ours.
2B?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. As you come in off the bypass, it would be the first lot on the right when you hit the intersection.
So Applebee's is moving from where it is now?
But
to-
that's
No,
not
no,
saying
no, no.
Applebee's is going there.
No.
Yeah, let's.
Hopefully.
No Applebee's is going there yet. They probably.
No,
haven't
what I
even
was saying, Frank, I
anybody commit
was
to it
showing the Townley Center in Lexington, which is
Oh, okay.
almost identical layout. So
It's not-
in Lexington, they have an Applebee's on that
I see.
where that would correspond to that same lot.
Any other questions for Joe? Thank you, Joe. The applicant here to speak?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Strom. I represent the applicant Anderson Communities. With me tonight is Dennis Anderson, president of Anderson Communities, Mike Kraft, our development manager, and Chance Staley with Integrated Engineering. As you're aware, we were scheduled to appear before you last month but we had to postpone due to an issue with our notification letters. I'm happy to say those notice issues have been resolved, and we're proud to present our subdivision plat and preliminary plan, development plan to you today. Dennis Anderson and Anderson Communities have significant experience designing, building, and operating successful community centers similar to our proposal today. Prime example of this, and as we've spent a lot of time talking about, is Townley Park off Leestown Road in Lexington. Since its creation, Townley Park has received significant notoriety and won multiple awards, and the planned unit development today before you is based on that, and we feel it actually improves on that design, creating a unique community center that will appeal to all the residents of Scott County. As part of our development plan, we've requested the 2 variances that Mr. Kane explained earlier. The variances for parking along the lot frontage and permitting buildings behind the build-to line are necessary because we believe that accommodating the needs of those who choose to drive to the center, as well as those who choose to walk to it, is important to the success of this development. To minimize the effects of these variances, our plan incorporates 6-foot wide sidewalks, enhanced pedestrian access through the parking lots, and ample street trees in order to create a walkable and attractive streetscape. Throughout this process, we've worked very closely with the planning staff and are happy to receive the recommendation of approval this evening. We agree to the conditions as they've been amended today and will be happy to answer any questions you may have. We ask that you approve our subdivision plat and development plan, and I appreciate your consideration tonight.
Any questions for the applicant?
I have none.
I don't know. I think it's well laid out.
Yeah.
That's a good plan. Does anyone have any more discussion up here? You need anything? Does anyone from the audience want to speak on this application? No? We have no objections
My
to anything.
only question would be, the part that's gonna be private street, would that be maintained by Anderson Communities in perpetuity, or?
Yes, it will.
State your name, Mr. Anderson.
I'm Dennis Anderson. Know my address?
So that
3804 Stillmeadow Lake.
the plan would be even, it wouldn't become responsibility of the
No.
businesses on either side of the street.
We need that design to create the feel we want for a town center or a marketplace, kind of like the downtown in Georgetown, and the rules no longer allow.
Were you sworn in? I thought you didn't.
All right.
Do you swear affirm what you're saying to be the truth, to the best of your information and belief?
Yes, sir.
Good, thank you.
But anyways, to create the feel and the walkability and the community feel, we needed to construct it that way. And it didn't meet the guidelines, therefore we built it as a parking lot, maintain it through our common area maintenance. Okay.
Just want to make sure that.
Through the
we'll be
Business Owners
taking
Association.
good care of them going forward.
We take good care of it.
I know you're planning it for walking and stuff, but Mr. Smith usually asks this question, but for as far as bicycles and stuff, I mean, is it, you having bicycle lanes on some of those roads? Or?
We don't do bicycle lanes. Sometimes we do the trails. Legacy Trail's gonna come through here. That would be bicycle. We never do a sidewalk less than 5 feet. They've agreed to 6 feet in the commercial, and that in front of the downtown area will be 10 feet in width. You know, we don't get skimpy when it comes to building pedestrian ways.
Can you show us where the legacy may come through? This
The what?
Where the legacy trail may come through on this? I don't know.
It comes through the back, and then we swing it up front, and we actually bring it through 2 ways. All right, it'll come in here, it'll come across here, and then we bring it down through the marketplace, okay? Once we bring it through there, we bring it out on the front because we didn't want it coming through the residential area. It comes through like this, here, and I imagine it'll cross over here or something. Is that the long-term plan?
Yeah.
But we also think it up and bring it through our residential neighborhood around the periphery, and we'll change the size of it and everything so that people understand where the major traffic goes. And but this is the major movement right here. I've been involved in Town Branch Trail. I built the first section of Town Branch Trail in Lexington. Donated like $1.7 million from land for to construct that trail. It's only part of the trail's come up, pick up in Scott County, come right through here, head on wherever it is. It's gonna be pretty fantastic to get it done.
Thank you. Anybody have any other questions for the app? Thank you, Mr. James. There's, any more discussion? If not, we'll need a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve. Mr.
I'll
Chair.
second that motion.
A motion
With the-
by Mr. by Mr. Shirley. And a second by Mr. Solsky. Is that including the variances?
That
Mr.
is
Shirley?
including the variances, sir.
We want to call it variances or waivers? Doesn't matter. Just waiver? Waiver 1 and 2?
They show on the conditions of approval as variances. Yeah, yeah, you got
That's what it
highlighted
that's what it said was
variances, and then
variances.
number 1 says variance.
So,
Sure.
Oh. okay. So we have a motion by Mr. Shirley and a second by Mr. Solsky. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion approved. Thank you.
Bring up as the next applicant is actually PBH Properties LLC. I think it's just a typo.
Our next item of business will be PSP 2017-24, the Pinnacle at Mallard Point. That's right?
Yes.
Do we need to discuss that, Joe?
Yeah, I think.
I
You want
did-
to go ahead, Matt, and discuss?
I'll
it?
make a comment if you don't mind. The PBH LLC that I found online is a Louisville company that's been dissolved since 2012, not related to Paul Haddock's. I'm thinking and assuming it's PBH Properties LLC, which is you, Brad, and Paul?
Correct.
Okay. I did find that out right before the meeting started, but not before we talked. So I don't know if that's just a typo on the application, Charlie, and we could still hear it hopefully.
Oh, I think so. We just need to, because the application information is correct, so we just need to note the correction.
Need to amend the application here tonight, right?
Well, I prefer to say we need to correct.
Correct.
Yeah, just
Okay.
correct the name.
All right.
Otherwise, because everything else is accurate, so.
What is,
So what is the correct
Company name.
LLC we're dealing with?
could you come up and talk to us, please, real quick? State your name.
I'm Brad Haddix. It is PBH LLC Properties.
Properties. LLC.
Properties LLC, I'm sorry.
Sorry about the confusion. PBH Properties.
LLC. PBH Properties LLC. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. All right, Matt.
All right. The application before you today is a proposal out in Mallard Point subdivision. There's a parcel, and I'll show you which one here in a second, that is as of yet undeveloped. It is zoned R2 currently, and the applicant is proposing developing that into 45 residential lots, 2 homeowners association maintained lots, and 1 lot that they've labeled as lake amenities. It is sort of in the where Mallard Point Drive turns to the right if you're going into the neighborhood and goes towards the north, and it's just on the northeast side of that. The zoning districts around the property are R1A and R1B, which are single-family districts. I believe many of those have been, have homes constructed on them. There's some property to the south that hasn't been completely built out yet. The applicant is proposing 2 new streets with this project. On the preliminary plan, they're as of yet unnamed. So the net density of this development is about 2.96 dwelling units per acre. And just sort of as a reference point, with the R2 zoning district that this property is in, there's a maximum of 12 dwelling units per acre. That would be the maximum that they would be able to build to. So this is significantly lower than the possible density that this development could have. The smallest lot that they're proposing is 5,250 square feet, and the average lot size is just north of 7,000 square feet. There is water and sewer available to this lot, and there are 2 variances that are required for this application to be approved. As you can see here on this map showing the zoning, this is Mallard Point Drive as it comes into the neighborhood, and here's where it kind of turns and goes towards the north. And this parcel that I've maybe poorly outlined in black is the parcel that we're talking about today, that the applicant is proposing developing. So this is the proposed layout for this preliminary development plan. So here's Mallard Point Drive again, and as you come in, there's one cul-de-sac here, just to the west of the lake, and then as you come around the corner, directly opposite of Black Duck Lane, is where they're proposing this second cul-de-sac to come in. This cul-de-sac will have about, I think it's 30 lots that have access off of it. This cul-de-sac will have, I believe it was 12 lots that will have access off of it. This lot here on the north will have access through this access easement if the application is approved. These 3 larger lots are proposed to have access off of Mallard Point Drive. I think I keep calling it Mallard Duck, but Mallard Point Drive. This little, I guess, square that's indicated here, that's for reference, that's where that existing pump station is out there in the neighborhood. So just as a little bit of background, this plan that's on the screen now was approved back in 1999. Obviously, as you can tell, there's significantly more lots that they received preliminary approval for. It was a total of 77 lots. 77, single-family lots. And the density that the applicant at that time was proposing was much higher. And even going back further than that, looking through previous staff reports for this project site, it does look as though this site was, when it was originally rezoned, was intended as a sort of a multifamily development. So considering sort of the step down between then and 1999 and the proposed step down now, the proposed density for this area seems to be decreasing over time. When we look at the parking and circulation, as I mentioned before, there are two streets that they're proposing, and the majority of the proposed lots will have access off of those cul-de-sacs. The 3 lots, 42, 43, and 44, will have direct access to Mallard Point Drive. We are recommending that access easement that I pointed out earlier that would provide access to lot 45 be increased in width from 15 feet to 18 feet. I think that'll bring it into better compliance with our subdivision regulations. As far as parking in this proposed development, all the houses should be on lots that have sufficient driveway widths or driveway lengths to provide at least some off-street parking. Whether or not there's garages involved with the development, they should be able to fit at least one car off-street. And then in addition to that, the applicant is proposing on all the cross sections for the internal streets for there to be parking allowed on one side of the street, which would provide some additional parking. As I mentioned at workshop, I don't recommend that any parking be allowed on Mallard Point Drive, as it is a collector street. Only 3 lots, are currently proposed to have access off of that driveway. But I think it's important that we note that for safety reasons, that's not something that staff supports. When we look at the variances, the 2 variances that would be required to approve this application as drawn are things that were approved with the previous development plan. They weren't specifically called out in the conditions of approval or in the motions that were approved with the previous application. So I wanted to be sure that, should this application get approved today, that we make sure that we specifically approve or deny the variances with it. The first one that they would require is Along the internal streets only, they're looking to reduce the front yard building line from 30 feet to 20 feet. This, as I mentioned, was something that was approved with the previous plan. They are proposing on the lots that front along, or that have frontage on Mallard Point Drive, for those to remain at 30 feet, as would be appropriate with that zoning district. I support this variance. I think it'll help the applicant to build lots given build on these lots given the terrain in the northern part of the county. I think it'll help to make the lots a little bit more buildable. As far as the second variance that would be required, the R2 zoning district typically has a minimum lot width at the building line of 60 feet. The applicant is proposing reducing that for many of the lots that they're developing, the average of which would be about 56.3 feet, and the smallest would be 50 feet. As I note here on the slide, that's still an increase over what was approved with the last plan. The previously approved plan from 1999 had a minimum lot width of 47 feet. So I support this variance as it kind of allows the developer a little bit of flexibility in their development, but it's still a reduction in the density overall from what's currently approved. There's just a couple of notes on as far as the stormwater and the proximity to the lake. These lots here that back up to Mallard Lake, if they're approved here tonight and whenever they submit a final subdivision plat, they will need to establish the minimum finished floor elevation for all of those lots so that we don't, potential buyers of those lots don't run into issues of flooding later on. As Ben has pointed out, and we talked briefly about at workshop, the applicant will need to determine whether the project site falls under the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers jurisdiction, and whether or not there's additional permits needed as part of the process of approving and building this development. I am recommending approval of this application. With the two variances and there should be 14 conditions. Charlie, I think your copy is 14. I think in the staff report there's 15 conditions listed. At workshop we talked about removing condition 13. As I mentioned then, and I'll mention now, that condition 13 is one that I had initially brought forward from the previously approved plan. However, after I've thought about it some more, that seems like something that would be extremely difficult to prove, who caused the damage to the road. It's also sort of a condition that was sort of left over from a time when the roads in Mallard Point were privately maintained by the homeowners association. So I have removed condition 13 as indicated here on the PowerPoint slide.
Explain number 14, Matt.
Number 14. That is, I'm not sure when that started. I know. I think basically since I've worked here, anytime there's subdivisions or even consolidations within the Mallard Point neighborhood, we've been asked to include a certification on those plans to be signed off on by the Mallard Point Owners Association, and so I just included that as a condition of this plat as well.
So what if they don't sign off on it?
That's a good question. I have gotten a letter from I believe it's the president of the Mallard Point Owners Association. They are in support of indicating they're in support of the application as long as the applicants agree to restrictive covenants and joining in as part of the owners association. So I mean, I don't know. That's always something we've included on plats in that neighborhood.
Mr. Chairman, if they were to refuse, but the applicant complied with everything, the homeowners association just refused to sign, we would just note that in the record and they would still be approved if that was, if that was the action of the board. That's just done just to certify that they're aware of it and, they raise any questions to make sure that it's consistent with homeowners, the regime that's in place. But if they just, for whatever reason, refuse to sign, that doesn't make this non-compliant, but we do need to note that in the record.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Matt.
Minor point here, but it should say include a certification by the Mallard Point Association instead of for.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Teacher's always watching you, Matt.
Yeah.
Always watching. Thank you, Matt. Does anybody have any questions for Matt? As the applicant, here to speak.
Brent Combs with Thoroughbred Engineering, and I have here Brad Haddix, one of the owners or members of the LLC. The only reason I got up really was to see if y'all had any questions on the design, but also to kind of continue on what we were talking about, the certification. When I was at Planning Zoning, Mark Smith came in and asked for us to use that certification on mainly consolidation plats, because what was happening is when people were buying an extra lot and consolidating with their existing lot, that was a reduction in the amount of dues they had to pay. And so the homeowner association wanted to make sure that they were keeping track of all of that, and I guess they charge them. I'm not sure how that works, but anyway, that was really what was behind that certification. So I'm not sure it really applies to this particular situation here, but anyway. So are there any other questions on the?
You guys are good with the recommendations?
Yes.
Brent. And then I had one question on that one, lot 45. Is that going to stay green space, or that big 2-acre lot?
Well, Brad could probably address that, but my understanding from Paul is that he has no intentions on selling it or doing anything at this time, but you never know what might happen, 20 years down the road or whatever.
What could happen there with that 2-acre lot? Could they,
Somebody could put a house on it.
just one house, is it, or?
Oh, 45 is a large tract.
Yeah.
On the
It's a
large
big,
tract.
big
There could be a
2-acre
house on
tract.
the
I
large
didn't know
tract.
if he's
Yeah.
gonna, because with the access easement off of that cul-de-sac, I didn't know if that was gonna be a house built there, or.
That was always my intention, is that they intended to just sell that as a single family lot.
I think the current plan is not to sell it, but he thought he would give it a number in case somewhere down the road that he needed to do that.
Does anyone have any questions for Brent? Thank you, Brent. Is anyone from the audience here to speak?
Good evening. My name is Bruce Kuntz. I'm here representing the Mallard Point Owners Association Board of Directors. And as the gentleman here referenced, we have been in contact and collaborating with PBH Properties LLC. The Mallard Point Board of Directors does support amending the Pinnacle of Mallard Point into Mallard Point. That will be done, as has been done previously, by a supplementary declaration of covenants, easements, and, restrictions. This area, as we understand it, will have 2 associations. They will be common to all the restrictions, covenants, and easements will be common to all the other Mallard Point owners currently. They will have additional requirements from the Pinnacle Homeowners Association, which are still being developed. So these, and this is for the record, and we have a memorandum of understanding, which I can give a copy of to this board for the record. So they will be, owners in Pinnacle will be required to be, as that area is amended to be part of Mallard Point, they will automatically be members of the Mallard Point Owners Association. And as our understanding from the memorandum of understanding, that they will also be required by PBH Properties LLC to be members of that homeowners association, which we have no objections to. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer that. But as the gentleman here indicated, we do sign off. That is part of the requirement that we sign off on the plats. So.
Anyone have any questions?
I just want to make, obviously, then, you, the residents of Mallard Point, and the homeowners association existing is fine with this development.
We have, as the board, we have in writing and in our annual meeting, so probably 3 or 4 times communicated to our members that as a board, and we are the ones that have the authority to approve it being amended into a Mallard Point Owners Association or in unanimous approval. So that's gone out in writing, which is our official way of communicating to all of our members. It was also a topic at our annual meeting back earlier this year, and it's been out on Facebook.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and speaking on
All
behalf
right,
of that. I
and
appreciate it.
give this a copy of the memorandum to you as part of the record.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is anyone else here to speak on this application? If no one else is here to speak, we'll need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve PSP 2017-24.
A motion by Mr. Solsky,
I second.
second by Ms. Mizell.
Go to the variances.
With the variances,
Two
Mark?
variances and-
Correct, with the 2 variances and technically 14 conditions of approval.
So we have a motion by Mr. Solsky and a second by Ms. Mizell. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion approved. You know. Our next item of business will be PDP 2017-25, High Grove Preliminary Development Plan.
Okay, this is a request for preliminary development plan approval for the High Grove project. This is an assisted living and retirement cottage project that received zone change approval in June, and this property was annexed by the city of Georgetown in June. Assisted living centers require also a conditional use approval. They went to the Georgetown Board of Adjustment and got conditional use approval, conditional use permit approval in July, so at the July meeting. I do have one correction on the staff report. I had in there 80 assisted living units, and I believe I had in statistics 80,000 square foot building. It's actually an 87,000 square foot building and 90 assisted living units in the building. Still 20 duplex cottages. And that's the size building, number of units that was approved by the Board of Adjustment with their conditional use permit. So this project is in South Georgetown. It includes what was the Giles property, which was a 10-acre tract between the landmark Office Park and Etterwood subdivision. It includes a large area, I think, of the Snyder property, which was zoned R1A, and then a large area that was zoned conservation back in 2012. So this is actually in 3 tracts now. So the conservation is basically south of this tree line here. Property in the front was zoned from A1 to R2 and from R1A to R2 PUD in June of this year. The project includes the large assisted living center building on the kind of the center rear of the R1A tract, which faces to the south, which is basically the rural service area, horse farms, the green belt south of Georgetown. The proposal is for all private streets with the main access from the bypass at Bevins Lane and a secondary access at Eder Lane. At the zone change hearing, they had actually initially proposed this connection to Beechwood Drive. They were asked to remove that from their plan, and they have removed that from their plan, so there's no longer a connection proposed to Ederwood subdivision, and there's no connection proposed at the south to Ederwood subdivision either. But they were requested to, when they prepare a plat to, if they consolidate this, they'll have to prepare a consolidation plat. If they don't consolidate, they will have to prepare a plat anyway to dedicate the right-of-way to Eder Lane. So we've asked that they reserve an easement there, not to connect, make any road extension at this time, but in the future date, down the road, if any changes occur, that there is still an opportunity to ask for that connection at a later date. Obviously, that would have to come back through Planning Commission and everything, but we want to reserve that possibility. This layout is, they got a PUD approval for flexibility in the arrangement of buildings and setbacks and so forth. They are proposing this to remain private, so all private streets and private ownership, one owner for all the buildings, and they'll be leased out or used by rented or leased, or however they whatever the arrangement is, to private individuals, but they will be retained under ownership of the owner of the whole development. They'll maintain the roads and all the landscaping and maintenance of the yards. It's two issues. We did require a traffic study at zone change. That traffic study showed that there were, based on the density proposed, there were no impacts to the surrounding road network that required road improvements. However, because they're going to have to do work at the bypass to straighten out this road, Bevins Lane takes a sharp 90 to serve the church and the landmark shops. We are asking that they, on their plan, they've actually shown that as a 24-foot wide entry road with 2 lanes, 1 lane in and 1 lane out. They'll have to get that approved by the state since it's a state entrance, but we are asking that they do show that to the state as three lanes, so 1 lane in and 2 lanes out, 1 through and left turn and 1 right turn dedicated, and that's just for safety reasons, to improve that intersection and to allow the right turn to happen if there's periods of heavy traffic on the bypass where you can't turn left or go straight through, so people aren't kind of forcing their way out because it's backed up. So we do have that safety concern, so we're asking that they provide that extra lane, even though it wasn't shown as needed in the traffic study. The other thing is the entrance on Eder Lane. It was, I think there was discussion at the zone change, and there was talk about gating it. So they are proposing to gate it at this time, but they may, they're asking for flexibility in the future to maybe not make that permanent emergency access, but allow movement for delivery of materials and maybe secondary access. But we are asking them to widen Eder Lane along their frontage to city standards. So it would make sense to kind of not require that to be emergency only, but to allow it to keep it open for secondary access, because they are going to widen and provide the right of way to widen Eder Lane, which is a city street. With the annexation, this city street extends to the property boundary. The development itself, the road sections don't meet city public road standards, but they are proposing these to stay private and private maintained. The sections are a little bit narrower in width than a typical city street would be required, but since there's not, there's no public use of the road other than to access this development, we are in agreement with the road width shown, but these will have to stay private. There's no ability to ask the city to come take over maintenance. These will have to stay private because they don't meet city standards as far as the road section. They meet all the R2 requirements as far as parking and landscaping. There's a landscape buffer required adjacent to Etterwood, and there's one in place. There's also, they back up to the greenbelt, and the greenbelt boundary technically in our future land use map and comprehensive plan is the 820 contour of Cane Run Creek, and that is this line here. And there's also provision in our comprehensive plan that the way the greenbelt is solidified or enforced is as development occurs on property along the greenbelt, that includes greenbelt on the property, the final greenbelt boundary is established at that time. And we also have a policy to allow adjustment of the greenbelt, typically by utilizing existing natural boundaries, so existing tree lines or existing stream beds or other natural features that would make a more easily utilized or logical greenbelt boundary. They are proposing to use the Cane Run Creek as their greenbelt boundary, which is pretty far to the south, but there is kind of an established natural vegetative area along the Cane Run Creek, and there also is a fence line, fencing in these paddock areas. And this area is all Zone C1 conservation, so it's not part of any urban developed area or any part of developed area development as part of this project. So we are in agreement that that would make a logical location for the greenbelt boundary. The greenbelt ordinance requires a screening and requires fencing, and that both can be provided at that boundary. So we are in agreement with that. There is, as part of the zone change, they showed a trail system, a trail easement that could tie into future greenbelt trail. They are showing that in a 15-foot easement along this line, but talking with them about it, we both agreed that we'd like to walk that property and make sure that that's the most logical location for the easement. So I've made the recommendation that trail easement be established before final development plan approval, so we'll have to walk the property after, if they get preliminary development plan approval. I don't believe there were any other outstanding issues. So there's the traffic improvements. They'll have to widen Eder Lane from the entrance to the property edge. We're asking for the widening of the entrance, and then the Greenbelt Trail condition. Other than that, we are recommending approval because it follows essentially the concept plan that was already approved, and they've responded and agreed to all our requests. That's all I had. I think there were 12 conditions of approval. Without going through them all individually, they all relate to the previous zone change approval. I think the only unusual or out of the ordinary condition is the Greenbelt Trail easement. That's all I have. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
So let me get you, make sure I'm right, what you said. The Eder Lane road improvements, they are gonna do the Eder Lane road improvements, but also put a gate up?
Well, I believe, I wasn't at the zone change hearing. I believe there was discussion about gating that entrance as an emergency-only entrance. We're recommending that, that they not be permanently required to keep that an emergency, a gated entrance. They'd be allowed to use that for more, as a more permanent secondary entrance.
I just wanna
I'm
make
not
sure I heard that right.
I didn't, oh, maybe Matt was at the meeting, maybe he can clarify.
Yeah, I think at the zone change, the applicant offered to gate the entrance and use it as emergency access only if the planning commission was going to allow them to waive the requirement to to widen the road. I think their thinking is that now they have to widen the road, so they don't necessarily want to be tied down with restricting their access to that road that they're going to have to widen.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions for Joe?
I have a question about the Greenbelt. Does the developer own the Greenbelt area? Is that part of their holdings? And do they maintain it and take care of it forever and so on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The Greenbelt area, there's no zoning designation Greenbelt. It's a line on the future land use map that's supposed to limit urban development. So sewers can't be extended beyond the Greenbelt. There's no urban development allowed beyond the Greenbelt, but it stays under private ownership.
Okay. So they'll mow it and take
Yes.
care of it and
Yeah.
look nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that all for Joe? Is the applicant here to speak?
Bruce Langford for the applicant. And I also have with me tonight Carl Snyder, who represents the owner, Continental Real Estate Companies, and Kevin Rich, Design Studios out of Louisville. I would also like to mention that Richard and Connie Snyder, seated to the rear, the owners of the Snyder tractor, are here tonight. We've been at this for quite a time now. We've tried to comply with all the rules and regulations. We like the report. We always like an approval. We always accept an approval, see? It's a good recommendation to have. That's what we come in here for. So we thank Joe for that. He's put a lot of time in it. The only issue that has really been discussed, in addition to, you might say, the gating of the Ederwood entrance, would be the connection to Beechwood. Now, I know that there's one or two or three people here tonight from Ederwood. We sent out all together on this application, we've probably sent out more than 200 notices. We have three nice people here, I think. 1, 2, 3, a little more. And they've stayed with us, and John's been a friend of the application. He may have something to say, but we don't want to take more time than you have allotted to us, but we just want to say that we prefer, when we come in here asking for something, we don't tell you what we have to have, we tell you what we prefer, and then we take what we can get. We would prefer not to show the access easement connection on the plan to Beechwood, because we don't want to encourage the city to take the easement, and we don't want the people in Beechwood or in Ederwood to think we're encouraging them. So if it has to be, it has to be. But if we could leave it off with just a note on the plat, that would suffice too. The note would say that we would grant the easement anytime the city asks for it. But if it has to be shown, then of course we're going to show it. Other than that, I would like to maybe give Carl, if he has something to say, an opportunity to say it. If not, we'll pass over you, Carl.
No, the only thing with the gate was, I think the gate exists today already, so we just like the columns and the way it looks, and
just to control access in and out of our facility for the safety of our residents. So we just thought it's there today. I think there was some discussions about how if we kept the gable, we have to do the improvements, but you know, if we have to put 2.5 feet there to widen it, we'll do that. So that was the only thing for me to clarify the gate.
And Kevin Rich, if you have any questions about the project, he designed it, and he's the best to address it if you have any specific questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Ritchie?
Just for the record, I hope you have the stormwater drainage well under control.
Yes, sir. You heard it loud and clear.
I think it would be a preference to have 2 entrances where it wouldn't be gated for access via an emergency, an ambulance, you know, especially being assisted living. I'd hate to have one entrance and some reason that entrance be blocked due to an accident on the bypass or something, to maybe have that entrance off of Etterwood open all the time.
Especially when a church is let out.
But yeah, if you get a church let out, you're good luck getting to somebody who's having a heart attack. And I mean, again, I know they've got medical staff.
I think the intention with the gate would be that it would be automated, so emergency services would have that, so in an emergency, they can get in.
It's automated now.
Yeah, it is.
So we have a low voltage expert that we work with who would
Yeah, you just
incorporate that into the whole system.
Right, so they can get in.
Okay.
Yeah, the discussion was,
Right.
the discussion was, we didn't want to have to make the widening to Eder Lane because our traffic study said we had maybe less than 10% of anybody that would go out that way if the gate were taken away. And so we felt that we didn't need to do the road widening, but, and that's what we thought was discussed because we said we would leave the gate. But when we were in workshop, it sounded like the widening was being required. And so what we said was, if it's gonna be required, then we don't wanna hamstring the property that if someday they wanted to take the gate away, they've paid for the road widening. But I think the preference would be to not do the road widening.
Well, and I think also our neighbors had expressed concern about overburdening their subdivision with traffic and more cars. So we thought by closing that down and making it a little less restricted access, people would tend to stay up on the phone, and we thought the traffic study supported that with, you know, really the lack of demand. We only have 10% of residents who have cars, and most of that is just for, you know, sentimental reasons. Most residents do not drive. We'll have 50 employees here, 50 here, there, shifted over 24 hours. So we don't generate a lot of traffic in any of our facilities. So it was an effort too to kind of shut that down, to keep
Mr.
traffic
Chairman, the reason that road improvements are required is because the development puts a burden on that road. If the developer's not gonna put a burden on that road, particularly if it's gonna be gated, then that kind of diminishes our ability to even require it in the first place. So it's almost as though if we require them to improve it, it needs to be open so they can use it. If they're not gonna have an impact on it, it's questionable, you know, our authority to make improvements to it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just like Bruce was talking about with a plat, I think we were comfortable dedicating the right-of-way, because currently I don't think there is right-of-way. It actually, property goes to the center line of Eder Lane. So originally what we had discussed was we would dedicate the right-of-way, and then maybe potentially similar to what Bruce was talking about with the extension of Beechwood, not showing any sort of improvements or any of that, just simply stating that should, you know, X happen, then the improvements would occur or something along that.
Recorded with the property, so that would track both of them.
But I think we've always planned on dedicating the right of way to get that off the private property. So we would just account for it to be wide enough right of way so the improvements could happen as it being a public road.
That's why I was asking the question, if it's gonna be gated, why are we improving a road that only certain people's gonna be having access to it? Kinda seems like.
I mean, it is gonna be gated, but it's gonna be automated too, so it's gonna
Yeah, that's true too. See, I was thinking gated, I was thinking something's gonna be locked where nobody's going in and out, but being automated, I guess the employees and such could use it.
employees, a few residents.
What's your suggestion?
The way I see it, the applicant has agreed to the improvements.
Yeah.
Why, at this point, would we say?
Say no.
Well, no, you don't have, let's change it all up, and no, I mean, we're getting an improvement. And it may not, at this point, they may not put all the new burden, which I agree with Charlie in some instances, but it's gonna be an improvement for everybody out there. So, we've got an agreed improvement, let's take it. And
Take it and run.
Yeah.
I want to say yes.
Yeah, enough discussion.
May I ask one comment? Joe said there were 12 conditions. We did agree to a 13th condition, and it says that this development will not connect to Beechwood Drive, but will provide a corresponding easement. Just wanted to note that, I think that's in your file, Joe.
Yeah, I think it was in the report, but it wasn't.
No, it's not a condition, you should take it. When it comes up, it's not a
Is there any more questions for the applicant? Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hey, Joe, they did mention that they prefer not to show it on the plat, that easement. Is that something?
I think that's fine as long as it's binding.
And it would be binding if it's in a note. The problem is, things get forgotten when they're in notes. If they're graphically presented, they won't be. I mean, I can't imagine anybody, the city ever wanting to make that connection. But at one point it was desirable, and we've always put them corresponding to existing ones. I really think this is probably an exercise for nothing down the road. But on the other hand, it's going to be up to the city, and we just don't leave that out, or we don't put it in a way that it's likely to be forgotten. This way they'll see it, probably never do a thing with it, but we've done our part.
I agree with that. No, I have to.
I guess I will speak on. I'm John Lewis, and I live at 302 Beechwood Drive. When we had the zoning on it, or meeting where we talked on the zoning, you saw how many people were in here opposed to that. And that's why they're not here today, because they thought it was, at that time, ruled out of the plot. If it's not, I'm in favor of it. I think it's the greatest development I've seen around our area. I think it'd improve it, but as long as it doesn't have the Beechwood extension into it. If it does that, then I would be opposed to it. As long as you can take that out of the plot.
I think the only thing they're holding that for is anything in the future, if it's 30 years down the road and that
Well,
the
see,
whole neighborhood changes or something.
In the 50 years that I've been out there, there was only 2 streets. And that was only when that was when it's supposed to be developed on further, but it hadn't been done. And I don't see it going with this property, that it would ever be a use for it. So I'm in favor of the project as long as the Beechwood part of it is excluded from the plat.
We've settled that, there's no question about that now.
Yeah,
They're not gonna put
I was
anything
just gonna
through it.
ask Charlie about, having notes. He, suggested sometimes got forgotten, where if it's physically on the final plat, obviously it won't. But,
Actually, it'll still probably be forgotten because it's not going to be needed.
yeah,
But
the only, and I agree totally with you. I don't think it ever would, and that's what Mr. Langford was saying earlier and at the workshop again, because some of the existing residents are just worried about it because it would show on there. Can we just not show it on there to make everybody happy?
well, certainly you can.
And then just put,
if you
have the
took,
note on it like Mr. Langford
if you took
suggested?
Bruce's suggestion, yes, sir, and simply said that applicant will grant an easement to the city connecting to Beechwood at such time as the city requests it, I mean, absolutely, and it'll be binding. The problem is, nobody will ever see that, and it'll be for nothing.
Yeah.
Even though we all, I think, if we took a vote tonight, would be unanimous, it's always gonna be for nothing, because I can't imagine any strategic reason for ever doing that. So, yes, sir, to be the simple answer to you.
Okay, just trying to make everybody happy. Huh? Okay.
Is there anybody else wanting to speak on this one?
I'm Matt Stone, and I'm the president of the Landmark Office Center Council of Co-Owners, Inc., and we are in support. That's all.
Thank you.
I think there should be a path from this development into that area more.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Rather
so
than
these
the-
folks
rather
could
than
walk
the other
over there.
way.
Get to the
Yeah.
doctor's appointment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joe, I had one more question. When you first started, you said it's gonna be a 90,000 square foot building, and then you said how many lots, or how many cottages?
90 and 87.
No, that's not what you said. I think you said.
Yeah,
something
yeah, it
different.
was.
Was it?
87,000 and 90
square foot
units.
and
90 units?
87,000 square foot.
90 units.
90 units.
90 assisted living units?
Yes. And 20 duplexes.
Okay. That's the only question I have. Is there any more discussion? If not, we'll need a motion.
I'd like to make the motion to approve PDP 2017-25 with removing the Beechwood easement off the plat, and with all the additional.
Making a side note on that.
And making a side note, as well as with all the recommendations. 13, including the number 13 that we added on there.
We have a motion by Mr. Solsky. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Shirley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. While everybody's still here, let me read the note that I've added to the conditions. Applicant will show by note a future easement to Beechmont, but not connect to it. Okay?
Beechwood.
Oh, I said Mont, didn't I? Yeah, okay, yeah, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Langford.
Oh, and that one is Beechwood, so, yeah. So yes, we get one sign.
Yes, sir.
One. Well,
Yeah, we still got that one. We still got one.
Well, you got dinner calling?
Talking about the planting. Huh?
You got dinner calling?
Oh, more than you made it.
See you, John.
I think that's the other
Yeah, there's only a couple more small things. You ain't got this. You ain't got
That
this.
was withdrawn. I can't even see it.
Notification of public hearing. Yeah, landscaping. We'll be done in about 10 minutes. See you, sir.
Thank you. For the record, Mr. Shirley is leaving.
Leaving? Oh,
Elvis
God.
has left the building.
Oh, my gosh.
Joe,
How can we
what's next?
continue?
All right. The next item is a public hearing on the notification policy, making the policy more of a permanent requirement. We're not recommending any changes to our notification, but just adding it into, I guess, our zoning ordinance.
Yeah, graduating it from a policy to a regulation in the ordinance.
Yes.
Do we need a motion?
Well, it's a public hearing, so we
Okay.
notified, we did notifications, or we put it in the paper, so.
Well, for the record,
Take any
In about 2 minutes, you
comment.
will.
For the record, this is a public hearing. We will open the public hearing.
Now, close the hearing and make a motion.
I think it was a great idea to have this, not only as our policy to make it a requirement, so I'll make a motion to accept
Well, if we
this.
could close the public hearing
Well,
first,
he did.
and then make it, oh, you did,
Yeah,
excuse me.
let's,
Oh, I thought you did,
all right, the
sorry.
public hearing is closed.
Excellent.
Now we need a,
I'll make that motion to put in place the notification policy and requirement. Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Solsky and a second by Mr. Wiseman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion is approved. Next one, Joe.
All right, the last item is, I'll let Matt speak to it, but it's we've got recommendations on changes to the landscape ordinance in regards to the new A5 zone district and rural residential lots.
This is also a public hearing. We will open a public hearing.
When the A5 zoning district was created, the zoning ordinance section that it's contained in references landscaping requirements. However, those requirements are not in the landscape and land use buffers ordinance. And so we've always applied the rural cluster regulations, landscaping requirements to those developments, as it was the only other landscaping requirements that we could find that that are applied to property in the A5 zone. So what we're going to talk about today are some proposed changes to give us some requirements for A5 zone property that is not a cluster development. So briefly going over what our current cluster requirements are. It currently requires diamond mesh wire or equivalent fencing with 16-foot fencing plank on top and post spacing 8 feet on center. I have noted here these sections that I've underlined are sections that I think we should probably change as in the cluster regulations as well, and I can get into that here in a minute. As far as trees for the cluster regulation, we currently require a double row of evergreen and deciduous trees spaced 40 feet on center. The ratio of evergreen to deciduous can't exceed 2 to 1. And it excludes any species that might be harmful to livestock. In addition, it establishes a tree preservation easement 50 feet around any A5 or any property where it joins A1 property. And existing vegetation can't be removed or disturbed unless it can be demonstrated to be sick or dead. So those are our current regulations, and from our discussions on this back in November, we discussed how these aren't necessarily appropriate to apply if somebody's making a subdivision of let's say 7-8 acre lots. Some of these requirements would be rather prohibitive. So what I'm proposing at this time is requiring fencing still. The diamond mesh is staying. I'm also proposing that we add to that language V-mesh or other non-climb woven wire fence. And I'm proposing that we make that change to the cluster regulations as well, just to be a little bit more specific in what we mean when we say or equivalent when we talk about that diamond mesh fence. The intent there, as far as I can tell, is for that fencing to be non-climb and for it to be woven wire so that it's there's less potential harm there for livestock and horses. Leaving the requirement for the 16-foot fencing plank on top and amending the post language to include a specification that be a wood post, as we briefly discussed at workshop. As far as the trees required for the landscaping, reducing that to a single row and spacing them out a little bit more to be 60 feet on center, requiring native species, and specifying that those trees need to be either medium or large size as per the planting manual. Still, excluding species that might be harmful to livestock, and making sure that we include notes on the plat regarding how the landscaping will be maintained going forward. Specifically, that if trees are removed because they're sick or dead, that they need to be replaced by the property owner. I am proposing that for these rural residential lots that aren't clusters, that we maybe remove that tree preservation easement just to allow the property owners a little more flexibility in the use of their property. So just some comments on these proposed changes. This would only apply to property that's zoned A5 and it would only apply to the borders where that A5 property adjoins A1 property. The second bullet point here is, I mentioned earlier, I am recommending that we make some changes to the rural cluster regulations to change that language regarding the fencing, as well as changing the language in the cluster regulations as well to specify that the posts be wooden. And then this last part has some changes from the information that was in the packet based on our discussions on Monday. The first section for the waivers is the same as what's in the packet. That, you know, I think it's appropriate that the Planning Commission be allowed to waive these requirements if the adjoining property owner, you know, supplies some sort of written agreement. And then the second two are ones that have added since our discussion on Monday regarding some the differences between the northern and southern part of the county. You know, that there be additional justification for waiving it if the property already is, you know, heavily wooded. It doesn't particularly make sense to clear out you know, rows of existing trees if there's mature tree lines already in existence. And then the second one be that, you know, the Planning Commission can also waive it if it is north of that north-south dividing line that's established in the comp plan.
When you're talking about waiving,
Mm-hmm.
are you talking about waiving the fencing requirement or waiving the landscaping requirement, or both?
My thinking is to waive the landscaping requirement, but leave the fencing requirement. I think
That's what the discussion was the other day, is that in northern Scott County, if you want to put a fence in, I guess if the adjoining property owner is willing to go without the fence, then I don't think anybody has a problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, we could make it apply to the fencing as well. If, I have no problem with that.
I don't think there's any problem with waiving the fencing requirement as long as the adjoining property
As long as the
owner
adjoining
doesn't do it.
property owner provides some sort of written
If the
agreement.
adjoining property owner wants a fence, and they're gonna have to put the fence in.
Okay. So I guess we could amend that to say that, you know, the Planning Commission may waive the landscaping and fencing with written agreement from the adjoining property owner.
Right, I mean, that's the first line there, the applicant provides written concurrence of the adjoining property owner.
Yeah. Okay.
You put
And-
on there,
and
Planning
I
Commission
think-
may waive.
I think it is also important, you know, that we include the language as, and I underlined it here, may. You know, there may be some cases where, as the Planning Commission's judgment may say that even though the neighboring property owner says they don't want it, you know, it makes sense. So that's why I left the word may. It's not compelling that just because you get written agreement that you have to waive the requirement. Then the last slide, we had some discussion in November about making the requirement apply to minor plats as well. I'm not in support of that. You know, most of the 5-acre subdivisions that we see, you know, come through as minor plats are, you know, property being divided one time, or, you know, transfer of property from, you know, a parent to a child, that sort of thing. And I don't think that would necessarily be appropriate. I think it is best if we leave it as, you know, for those property boundaries between the A5 and the A1 zoning. However, if you do think that it is appropriate for minor plats as well, I think we have this. We include the same potential for it to be waived by the Planning Commission if there's a written concurrence. That's all that I had on this.
Any other questions, Brad?
I agree with you on the minor plat thing. I wonder why there should be a difference between the rural cluster and the A5. Seems like they're similar in so many ways.
I think the difference is that with the rural clusters, the lots are a lot smaller, and so the density of the development feels a little bit closer to what you would see inside city limits and more of an urban development. And so the intent is to screen that a little bit more heavily and provide the fencing so that there's not as much conflict between agricultural uses and the urban uses. With these ones that we're talking about, with sort of these reduced regulations, we're talking about tracts that are going to be between 5 acres in size and, 9.99 acres in size. So they're larger. It would be really expensive for somebody to provide a fence and a double row of trees spaced 40 feet on center, but also, the difference in the densities and the intensity of use just isn't the same as between the clusters and the
Well, that makes sense,
agricultural
yeah.
areas, yeah.
Yeah. My other question was on this rural cluster requirement, you say diamond mesh or equivalent. Equivalent in what way?
Yeah, well, and
Climbability or
that's what it says currently, and I'm actually proposing that we change that to the other language where it would say diamond mesh, V mesh,
The same as you
or
have
other
down
no
on the
climb.
other-
Yeah,
yeah,
the
okay.
same. Change it to the same language.
Okay, I agree with that.
Okay.
Anyone have any other comments? or
Charlie,
questions
do we have to
for me?
vote on this, or is it just a change?
No, you need to,
Yeah.
yeah, because this could be a
If anyone
change
else
to
has
the
comments,
ordinance.
yeah.
So yes, we would need a motion and
And a
vote, and then that recommendation would go to the legislative body.
Now, do you have any comments, Brian, or anyone else have any comments?
I'll make a motion then to
Well,
adopt
wait,
the
we got-
changes.
We got to close the public
Yes,
hearing.
close
Oh,
the public hearing.
sorry.
So we'll close the public hearing and then, now
And
we'll
then
take a
thank
motion.
Mark for being quick on the draw.
I'm trying. Charlie,
You
I'm
are,
trying.
you are, and I
All right,
appreciate it
Now
so
we need a
much.
motion, Mr. Sosa.
I will make a motion to adopt the rural residential landscaping changes as presented.
And
Second.
second.
Second by Ms. Mizell. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those
Oh,
opposed?
I'm sorry. Excuse me, this is a recommended
Recommendation.
ordinance change. You need to do a roll call vote.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and we probably need to re-vote on the one we did a moment ago, because that also would be an ordinance change.
Ordinance change,
Oh, that was, wasn't it? Okay.
yeah. Do that one first?
No, we're still on this application here. Mr. Wiseman,
Yes.
Mr. Solsky,
Yes.
Mr. Caldwell,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Mizell,
Yes.
and I vote yes also. Okay. Motion approved. Now we'll go back to our notification requirement.
Yes, sir, please.
We'll take the roll call on that one. Mr. Wiseman,
Yes.
Mr. Solsky,
Yes.
Mr. Caldwell,
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Mizell.
Yes.
And Chair voted yes on that one also. All right. Is that it, Joe?
I did have one more thing. Sorry, this one's very brief. We talked about this brief at workshop. The planting manual that we currently use is the 2007 version of the planting manual. We're looking to update that to the 2016 version of the planting manual. I have the only changes that I was able to find when looking at the two versions are some of the trees were changed in classifications. I put those here on this slide. I think that we should make the switch, and I just look for that approval.
Do we need?
You need an approval on that?
I think we need approval on that, right? Yeah.
This is just.
Is this just like a,
Adopting the changes to
is that just that's just our requirements, right? It's not an ordinance, it's just our requirements.
Yeah, that's never been a part of the ordinance.
We don't need to vote
This
on
is in
that,
effect,
do we?
that's if you will, that's a local reg. It's not just a policy. This is but it's a regulation that you adopt in order to administer the ordinance itself.
Okay.
So I think we can just,
I'll make a motion to
Thank
adopt
you.
the new planting manual that Matt presented.
Motion by Mr. Solsky.
second.
Second by Ms. Mizell. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion approved.
Thank you.
Is that it, Joe?
Yes.
That's it? All right, motion, or,
Motion
meeting-
adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.
excellent.
Motion adjourned.
Motion adjourned.